Welcome to What Am I Signing? This is where I go over all the different forms that you're going to have to look at throughout a transaction. So today we are talking about the buyer representation agreement, formerly known as the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. So this goes into how we work together and then how compensation is paid out for the transaction. So let's jump right in. Okay, the first document we're going to get into is the disclosure regarding agency relationships. It kind of just outlines what a seller's agent is, what a buyer's agent is, that agents can represent both buyers and sellers, and that we are working with multiple at the same time, and the responsibilities of buyers and sellers. So this is just a disclosure that's provided by the state of California. Next page is the civil code sections. So this is kind of just definitions of what these words mean when it comes to legal terms. So what's an agent? What's a buyer? What's an offering price? What's a listing price? So those are all included in here. The next page is the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory. So this just outlines all of these different classes and characteristics that sellers and buyers cannot discriminate against another party because of. So, for example, if a seller chooses an offer because somebody meets a certain characteristic that they're looking for, that would be rights to be able to sue them. These are just outlining what all those protected classes are and who is required to comply with these fair housing laws. This document is the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. So basically, it means that I am working with multiple buyers at the same time, multiple sellers at the same time. So, from a buy side perspective, I could have a client who is interested in the same house that you are interested in, and you could both want to submit an offer. What my requirements are to disclose that information to you. I would never tell that client what you're doing or vice versa. I would keep everything neutral and just talk to you about what your offer is that you're submitting, talk to them about the offer that they're submitting, and then the seller would make the decision at the end of the day. But if we ever run into that issue, I would always tell you and have to disclose that I am representing somebody else who wants to submit an offer on the same property. There's also dual agency, which means that I could work with the seller and the buyer on the same transaction. What that means is if the seller is selling their home and let's say I have the listing and you as my client are also interested in that listing and want to submit an offer, then that would be dual representation. I am not going to share what your highest offer might be or what their bottom line might be in order for you guys to get the deal. I'm going to talk to you the same way that I normally would, find out what your thresholds are, see what you want to submit as your best offer. And then, same thing with the seller. I would just review everything factually with them and see which offer they want to go forward with. So, you can always be sure that I'm super honest. I'm not disclosing information that I shouldn't. I want to make this fair for everybody because I believe in karma and karma's going to come back to get me. This next disclosure is the wire fraud and electronic funds transfer advisory. So when we get to this point, you'll wire it for either your deposit or for the final payment that you make at the close of the transaction. And this just says that wire fraud is a real thing. We'll walk through all the steps to make sure that it's getting to where it needs to go appropriately and making sure that we're verifying everything before you send that money. Because once it's wired, you can't get it back. Okay, now we get into the meat and potatoes. This is the beginning of the actual representation agreement. And so I just have some placeholders here that you will see on yours. But this is kind of just so I can have a general overview of what it's going to look like. So Antonio Hooker is our buyer. That was my grandfather's name, represented by Grounded Real Estate, which is the brokerage that I work with, starting on the beginning date of the agreement. So that will be different for you. And then these agreements can't be more than 3 months long. So I just have 90 days as a placeholder. We can always extend that if we haven't found the property that we're looking for within that time frame. But per the rules that we have in place, this agreement can't be more than 3 months long. This says that you have no pre-existing representation agreement with another agent. So if you do, please make sure to tell me about that so we can take the appropriate steps. This number 3 talks about where the property is that we're looking. I just have a blanket statement of the counties that I work in. So Sacramento, Placer, Yolo, San Joaquin, and Stanislaus counties. If you need to go outside of there, definitely let's have a conversation. I know other agents who work in different counties and can provide you a great agent to work with and refer you to them if it doesn't fall within my purview, or let's have a conversation about it and see where it goes. Okay, number 4 is the compensation to broker, and this outlines how much you are responsible for paying me, and we'll get into how we can have the seller cover that a little bit further, but basically, this is what I charge for my services to help you work through this transaction and purchase your dream home. So the fee that I charge is 3%, which is what you'll see here, and that is based off the sales price. Broker compensation is always negotiable, but the same as you would walk into anybody's office, you could haggle with them. This is the price that I charge for the services that I offer and the level of experience that I have and how I treat my clients because I think you're the greatest people in the entire world. I've never worked with anybody that I didn't really like, and I just want to help you accomplish your goals. Moving down a little bit further, we get into buyer acquisition. And so I work with my clients exclusively just because that means that the work that I'm doing, I know that I'm going to be compensated appropriately for it. Versus if we work non exclusively, that means you could also be working with another agent and I just feel like it's a little bit unfair to me to do work for you, not knowing if you're committed to working with me because I can't work for free. Just doesn't work like that in the world. But no worries. If anything ever happens and you decide that you don't want to work with me, that is a okay. And I come from a position of I don't want to work with people who don't want to work with me. And so there's always an out to this. If anything changes throughout our relationship and throughout this process, you can know that there's an easy way out. So outlined here, it just says there is a way to cancel this agreement. It doesn't have to be mutual cancellation. So it just needs to be written. So you can just send me an email or something that says, Marvin, I'm no longer wanting to work with you. Please cancel our buyer representation agreement. And that's that. I am going to jump down a little bit to E really quickly because it says if this is canceled, it's canceled immediately. And so no harm, no foul. We don't need to be working together anymore. But if for any reason you end up purchasing any of the properties that we walked through together, within 30 days of that cancellation, I still have rights to getting paid. So it just protects me a little bit, protects you as well, because you're able to get out of the deal. And so we just want to make sure that it's a fair relationship all the way around. Moving back up to D, accounting for payments to brokers by others. So this is where we can ask for the seller to cover a portion of this commission, or we can increase your offer a little bit just to build it into the deal and build it into the loan. So I know in California, it's already hard enough to save for down payment plus closing costs. And then to add another 3% on top of that seems ludicrous. So we're going to find the best way to have this money be covered. If it's something that you can't afford, we can build it into the loan by adding it to the purchase price. We can see if the seller can cover the commission. Basically, what this says is if anybody pays me in the transaction, then that amount that I get paid gets credited to what you owe me. So let's say they're willing to offer 2%, then you would only be responsible for 1%. Moving on to F, disclosure of anticipated payments to broker by others. Again, this just outlines if I receive any payments from any other party, I have to disclose that to you. I can't double dip. Like the seller's going to pay me 2% and then I'm going to make you pay me 3% and I make 5%. That's not how this works. So you can be sure about that. Timing of compensation is that we don't get paid until the deal closes. So I'm not charging you like a per door opening fee or an offer strategy writing session fee. Once the deal closes, then I get paid. So if we work together and then you decide to cancel and it doesn't work out, you don't owe me anything. So I'm here to just be a guide and a resource to help you accomplish your goals. And if we do that, then I get compensated because we have a successful transaction. The next sections talk about agency relationship, dual agency, which we talked a little bit about from the disclosure before. And then it goes into what obligations that I have to you as the buyer that I'm working with. So that's, for example, locating and presenting properties that could be of interest to you, ordering reports and investigations when we get to that point, assisting you with the financing process and maybe introducing you to lenders. And then it gets into some of the obligations that buyers have. So good faith is saying that you just agree to, in a timely manner, view any properties that I send you. Let me know if you have any interest and kind of move the needle a little bit, I guess you could say. Personal and financial information. We'll have that conversation as we sit down, or if we already sat down. I'm not a big stickler on like, you need to get me this within 7 days, but we need to see if you can qualify. So we'll have to get those documents together, get them to the lender, and then move the process forward a little bit. C talks about you just agree to read all of the documents that I provide to you. I will always typically probably give you some sort of video like this or an email that says, this is the gist of what these documents are, but it is still your responsibility to read everything before you sign it. And I would highly recommend to read everything before you sign it. Reports and investigations, that you agree to pay for any reports and investigations that you choose to do. Buyer material issues talk about that you should notify me of any material issues that change your status to purchase a home, or if you've been in any kind of litigation or anything like that. F talks about you'll always provide me correct and accurate information. Number 8 talks about attorney fees. Just if anything happens to us, we're just each responsible for paying our own fees, and that we would likely go to mediation prior to any like legal action first. So that is kind of the gist of this document. You would sign here, I would sign here, and this has all of our contact information on how we get in touch with each other. And then there are a few disclosures here at the end as well. So, buyer transaction advisory just talks about what some of your obligations are as a buyer and what the duties and limitations are that I have as an agent, what I can and cannot do, basically. So, I would take a quick glance at that. And then the next one is the buyer investigation advisory, which talks about that it's very important to do inspections on your property. There are some instances where you might want to waive that inspection contingency. And but we always recommend at least doing them so you know what you're walking into. And it's important to know the kind of the status of the home. And then the last form is the California Consumer Privacy Act, which just says that I am not sharing any of your information with anybody. So you can be assured that it is protected and it is safe. So if you have any questions about any of these forms or documents or the buyer representation agreement, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Again, this is a general overview. The one that I send you for signatures may look a little bit different, and it will have your information on it. So this was What Am I Signing? Hopefully you got a lot of good information out of it. And again, if you have any questions, let me know.